obviously the SCOTUS just came to a ruling on the voter roll purge case that they were hearing. So talk to me about what the decision that they made.
Well, today's decision is obviously a huge win for the Youngkin legal team. They had claimed all along that the voter purge, where non-citizens were removed from the polls in Virginia, was legal. Two courts prior to today had said it was an illegal purge. But today, the Supreme Court has said that Governor Youngkin can continue to remove voters from the polls in Virginia who are non-citizens. And so that's the clear ruling from today. So it's a big win for the Youngkin legal team.
Now, a federal district judge ruled against that executive order, and a court of appeals upheld that ruling. What was the difference in the Supreme Court's reasoning? Why did they say that this is not illegal?
Well, that's a great question. We don't really have much to read on the tea leaves of the United States Supreme Court because it's just a one-page order that says basically Youngkin can continue to purge voters from Virginia's rolls. They don't give the reasoning for it. But I think the bottom line that they're saying is that a state can remove non-citizens, whether it's within 90 days of an election or whether it's before 90 days. You can remove non-citizens at any time, is what the Supreme Court has saying. They don't give their reasoning because the election is so soon. They don't probably have time to give an opinion. I don't think we'll ever get an opinion as to the precise reasoning. But the bottom line is all states now can remove non-citizens no matter what the timing is, whether it's within 90 days of an election or not.
And that was going into my next question, was both the federal judge and the Court of Appeals said this violates federal election laws. It violates that 90-day blackout period of an election. So with the Supreme Court's ruling, did they decide that it does not violate federal election laws, essentially?
And that's the bottom line. Yes, the United States Supreme Court is saying that what Governor Youngkin is doing when he's removing non-citizens within 90 days of an election, that does not violate the Voter Registration Act. They don't say precisely why it doesn't violate that act, but the bottom line with this one-page order today, giving the green light to Governor Youngkin to remove non-citizens from the rolls, they're saying that it doesn't violate the Voter Registration Act, that nothing was done illegally here by Governor Youngkin, and he's got the green light to continue to remove folks from the voter rolls in Virginia.
And you mentioned this comes at the perfect time. So can you talk a little bit about how those 1,600 voters were supposed to be reinstated today, and the SCOTUS acted pretty quickly and took up the case quickly? So can you talk to me about how you mentioned this really was such a timely manner and they made this ruling pretty much against the clock?
Yeah, they wanted to make sure that the Youngkin team did not have to reinstate folks on the rolls. That'll now be left to each individual who has been removed from the rolls. If they are in fact a citizen, and a number of these folks are, they're going to have to apply the paperwork to get themselves back on the voter rolls between now and next Tuesday. If they don't do that, they won't be allowed to vote. So if they are currently citizens, and apparently a number of these folks are, it's going to be left to them to go to their voter registrar and to establish that to get themselves back on the voting rolls.
And I know that you mentioned the order is pretty simple. It's a one-page order, doesn't give much in-depth detail about anything. Can you talk about, you mentioned that we may never know the exact reasoning. So can you talk a little bit about that? Is that common in Supreme Court cases, or was this one just so quick and timely that they just felt the need to present a ruling without necessarily any reasoning?
Well, I think the Supreme Court felt it was a case that they wanted to get involved in. I think if they actually had to write an opinion where all the 6 justices who were in the majority were going to agree to the exact wording of that opinion, that would have taken days, maybe weeks. And so they were in agreement that Youngkin's order did not violate the Voter Registration Act. So I think they just decided to proceed with a simple order to avoid writing a complicated opinion. The disadvantage for the public is we don't know the exact reasoning of why they did it. But nonetheless, I think every state now has the green light to continue to purge voters from the voter rolls if they're non-citizens up until the day before the election.
And that was going into my next question. Do you think that this ruling will now spark future lawsuits or future purges just around the country? Do you think this is going to set a precedent?
I think it sets a precedent. I think, each state now will have the green light to continue year-round to remove non-citizens from their rolls. They don't have to worry about the 90-day rule, which said you can't do it within 90 days of a federal election. Now you've got the green light to do that. It'll probably cut down on litigation. It'll probably increase the number of purges. And I think governors or legislatures who start those purges, I think after today, they'll know they'll have the green light to do it, that any legal challenge would likely be unsuccessful.
Would you say this is an unusual ruling, just dealing with the fact, well, let me rephrase that. Would you say this is an unusual ruling, not only given the timing and the quickness of it, but also the fact that there was no reasoning behind it?
Well, that'll often happen in a case like this. I think all the lawyers and the judges wanted to make sure that the Youngkin team had the opportunity to get to the United States Supreme Court. After all, the Court of Appeals issued their decision on Sunday. So they wanted to make sure Youngkin had the opportunity to go to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court, basically their deadline was to issue an order today, and they met that deadline. I don't think they felt an obligation to write an opinion. They felt what Youngkin was doing was legal, and so they stepped in there. Judges have immense power, and they can step in with an order or an opinion, but either one has the bottom line. It's the rule of law that, the country's got to follow it. The Supreme Court has spoken.
Thanks for watching the ABC 13 YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos and live coverage and local stories, click to subscribe and download our ABC 13 News app.